employee is yourself, right? Number 3, guess what you have? No money. And we all know the saying, it takes money to make money, right? If it takes money to make money, how in the world do you do that? Pretty simple. You have to have a capital objective. So for me, let's say, anytime I start a business, I go, what's a realistic capital objective? Interesting in this book, Steve Wynn, you all know him if you've seen anything like the movie The Hangover or whatever. He started the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. He did, now he owns the Wynn, obviously, named after him, and he owns Encore. So it's this guy, this billionaire guy who owns, all these big hotels in Vegas. How did he start out? Well, he was a little guy. He had a small company, and he went to a guy, not in this book, but a dude named Milken Drexel, and he said, I have a capital objective. I know how much money I need to make this idea work. And so he asked for $100 million. And Drexel was an awesome company, and they said, that doesn't sound like enough, so they gave him a check for $130 million. If you look at what Wynn did, and then he used that to buy the Golden Nugget Hotel. Yeah, he bought the Golden Nugget, and then he leveraged that into the Bellagio, and then he leveraged that into Wynn and Encore. He also has a nightclub that's, I think, the highest revenue nightclub in the world. They pay the DJ $50 million. Excess, that's the one. All right, so anyway, back to what I was talking about. That all came from Steve Wynn having a plan. And I can't tell you how many people, like, I'm an investor. It sounds simplistic. It's not simplistic. Most people, and I'm just, speaking to you. So if you got a business, I'd be interested to know if I said, tell me your capital objective, how much money you need, and a realistic reason you need that much. Because some people just go, I need $50 trillion. That's not a capital objective. That's a dream. That's make-believe fantasy land. But if you say, I need $500,000 because I'm going to buy this piece of equipment for $150,000, this lease, I need to lease a place. Let's say you're doing a retail spot. This is how much I need for inventory. I was actually just talking to a dude in a health business, supplement business. And he's like, if I can get enough capital, I can buy the stuff like wholesale, and I'll save a ton of money, right? That's a capital objective. So you're writing this down. Step number 1 is the simplest one. It's so simple, people are going to be like, Ty, that's not even good advice because it's too simple. Have a strategy. And in this book, they had a strategy as to why they needed the money. Every morning from 8:30 to 11:30, every day, 3 hours a day. Before they had a business, before they had an office in Manhattan, they met at a little cafeteria, and they just mapped out a strategy. And these are 2 smart guys. These are some of the smartest guys in the world. And they needed 3 hours a day of concentrated focus. So if you're super ADD, you're not going to be able to do this. Most people in the world now, the thought of, you could not get them to sit down for 3 hours if you paid them $1 million. People are so random in the world now. Now, somebody just asked me, Ty, are you talking about a business plan? I'm not necessarily talking about a business plan, because a business plan gets bogged down in all kinds of details. I've seen people's business plans. They're insane. They start making up projections. Oh, well, the market it's a $15 billion industry. I'm going to take 10% market share, so I'm going to make $1.5 billion. You're going to make, as an investor, blah, blah, blah. That's not a good business plan. That's not a good capital objective. What I'm talking about is fill out the section in your business plan. Start by filling out the capital objective section, which is why I need money and how much I need. And what it'll do, it'll force you to have the discipline to really think through what you're doing. If you have half a brain, which I'm sure you do if you're on these calls, I don't mean that disparagingly, I just mean a lot of the world doesn't use even 10% of their brain. But if you have half a brain, you realize you can't just write on capital objective a random number. Nobody who's smart, who has capital, is going to buy it. One of the first times I raised capital was from this guy, very wealthy guy, one of the wealthiest guys in the world. And that dude wanted to know, he's like, Ty, how much money do you need and why do you need that much? And you had to justify it. You had to defend it. The reason rich people are rich and can invest in you is because they're not stupid with their money. So if you approach them stupid, basically, people reciprocate. If you approach people with a stupid plan, they'll usually give you a stupid answer like, hell no, I'm not going to invest in your idea. Step 1, sit down, no ADD, and focus If it takes you 3 hours a day, then so be it. The reward is totally worth it. Spend 3 hours a day doing that. If you can pull it off in 30 minutes because you've already thought it through, great. But map it out. And these guys, if you're wondering how to do it, they use yellow legal pads. Literally just legal pads. Sometimes I use on my phone, I use Evernote. So just start mapping out stuff. Start doodling, drawing. You know, a lot of people like to doodle, but this is like doodling with a purpose. You're just doodling, writing stuff out. And the next thing you know, it starts to come together, and it should feel literally like you're a general in an army and you're sitting in a war room, and there's maybe you and one other general, and you're just like mapping stuff out, okay? That's of absolute importance. The next thing is, I already gave you, be realistic in your capital objective. What you generally want to know first is to benchmark the minimum amount of money you need. The minimum. A lot of people focus on the maximum. They're like, dream big, Ty. But, you know, Coach Dean Smith, one of the top basketball coaches of all time, he said, I never bought into that philosophy. The way capital usually will come into your business at first is from friends and family. Maybe you'll get 10 grand from your grandma, or, you know, somebody has a credit card, they'll let you put $8,000 on. My friend did this. He started out with like 100 or 200 grand, then he got $1 million, then the next round, a year later, he got 8 million, 20 million, and he raised $80 million, but it comes in rounds. Have a realistic minimum goal. I need this much capital or else it's not viable at all. And what that'll do, it'll force you to be disciplined, to really think through how to run this business lean. You want to be a lean machine at the beginning, okay? You don't want to have, like Schwartzman is famous. He did a birthday party and he invited like Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, and he spent $3.2 million on his birthday party. But he was already making, 80 million bucks a year. So at the beginning, he didn't even have an office. In fact, Blackstone started, in this book it talks about, he started in a 2-room office, a teeny junky office in Manhattan. Not super junky because he was obviously in Manhattan, but he had made some money from some other deals. So he wasn't even starting at the bottom. If you're starting at the bottom, just get a minimum amount. For most of you, a minimum amount should be between $10,000 and $50,000. You don't need more than that for most businesses. If you're doing like a pharmaceutical drug or something, maybe you do. But if you're doing most businesses, people oftentimes start out in a service-based business, and that's what I'm going to talk about next. You don't need that much capital. You need your own brain. You need a website. You need a little bit of marketing dollars and a little bit of staffing cost, and possibly rent. Although most businesses at the beginning, you're better to start off in your garage, right? Going back to this original kind of plan. So step 1, sit down, non-ADD. Step 2, minimum realistic amount that you need should be, for most of you, if it's your first business, 10 to 50 grand. Then step number 3, okay, and this is an important step that I feel like in some ways maybe is the hardest. You have to make an approach plan. Even in this book, it's interesting. So these two guys who started Blackstone, which is a multi-billion dollar company, they did $2 billion of profit. That's a lot of profit. They thought they could just approach a few people and they'd get lots of capital. They had contacts from their other business. I think one of them worked at Lehman Brothers. They're like, we'll just reach out to the people who used to fund our other businesses at Lehman Brothers, and they'll fund our new business. Well, they were surprised. Nobody wanted to give them capital. They really struggled. So you have to have an approach plan. That's what I call that. So the approach plan needs to be at least 10 people who are seriously could give you 50 grand, or maybe know somebody could give you 50 grand. I think you have a good chance of landing one of them. Now, if you already have a track record, you've already made $1 million in a business, your ratio might be 1 out of 4. But it's never going to be 1 for 1. Like, even, it's funny, I watched this thing by Jack Dorsey, the guy who started Twitter. You would think a guy who started Twitter, he went on to start a new company. Square. He started Square, this new company. So he's the founder of Twitter. So he goes to investors, say, I'm retiring from Twitter and I'm starting a new business. You would think people would line up to give him capital. No. Nobody wanted to give him capital because they were like, well, you know about social network, but it doesn't mean you know how to do a bank, it's a credit card merchant business. So right there you see that even if you've already made people incredible amount of money and you become a billionaire yourself, you still have to have an approach plan. So make sure your approach plan has volume of people, at least 10, and make sure you're not discouraged. So that's number 4. put on your big boy pants or your big girl pants and stop getting discouraged. If you need help with this, you need to read a book by, it's called The Four Agreements. The Four Agreements, it gives you 4 things to live an amazing life, 4 rules. And one of them is don't take things personally because they're usually not about you. So if you're somebody who gets, butt hurt if anybody says to you no, then you need to stay an employee for the rest of your life. This is the real world. People protect their money. Trust me, if you steal $10 from somebody, they might shoot you. So if you go out and ask people to give you 50 grand and you just expect them to go, oh yes, 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 oh you're awesome, I'm going to give you 50 grand. You need to live in an alternate universe. In this universe that we live in, people guard their capital literally as well as they guard their children, as well as they guard, their home. So, number 4 is thicken up your skin so that when you do this approach, you're just going into it knowing that without a doubt, I'm only going to get 1 out of 10 people. And if you happen to be super persuasive and you get 1 out of 5, then pat yourself on the back and you'll be better than expected and your brain will be happy because that's called contrast bias. It's always better to aim for 1 out of 10 and then you actually get everybody, all 10, to put money in. But if you do a 1 to 10 plan and you know that the person on average can give you $20,000 and your capital objective, you realize you need 50 grand, then you got to approach about 25 people. You approach 25 people with the potential to give you 20 grand each. You close 1 out of 10. That means you'll close about 2.5 of them. 2.5 times 20 grand is $50,000. Okay? Right there, I'm telling you, that's how you raise money. So let me read some questions here. Where do you find investors? Good question. Here's where you find investors. At the beginning, it's friends and family and friends of friends. Okay? Keep it that simple. That's literally what they call it in Silicon Valley. They call it like the friends of friends round. If you're already beyond that, you've already done it from friends of friends, then the next thing that you can evolve to is you got to start going to where relatively high net worth people hang out. So that can be cigar shops if you like to smoke like cigar lounges if you like to smoke cigars. It can be, there's private little clubs. There's a few different ones in LA. There's like young entrepreneurs. Number 3 place you can find investors is actually going out to investor groups. There's venture capital groups. There's angel groups. If you just Google them, you can start finding ones in your local area. Don't approach them needy. Approach them like you want to interview them, like you want to get information, okay? Kickstarter is a place, yes. Would investors invest in a 17-year-old founder? I'm Sahil. Yeah, there's a guy that, there's a kid that 15 started a business and sold it to Yahoo for like $30 million. What's the best type of business to build? I just did a talk on this. The best type of business to build, in my opinion, is one that catches trends and stacks multiple trends. So I just did a talk on this yesterday. So like 3 trends that, 1, you probably know about, the internet. 2, that health and education. Those are 2 trending industries globally. So if you stack like an internet health education business, that's a great business in my opinion. I come from high level fitness and marketing. This is what opened my mind. Personal development. So yeah, personal development, service-based business. These guys started out doing service-based stuff, M&A it's called, and they use that capital to fund their business. So oftentimes businesses start service-based. Someone said, how about a fitness business? Certainly. In the long run, you want to evolve away from service into like more of an empire where you're looking over multiple services. How about selling clothes? Fashion. The guy from Shark Tank, he talks about how he started, what's his brand? Sean John?
Fubu, right there.
Fubu. How he started Fubu. And he said, first, try to sell some shirts to strangers. He said, that's the litmus test. If strangers like your stuff, he said, now remember, this kind of contradicts what I said, but it doesn't really contradict. You raise money from friends and family, but your first customers to test your product shouldn't be friends and family because they're biased. You know what I'm saying? So, have I heard of ACN? Yeah, I think that's a multi-level marketing thing. Multi-level marketing is a good little start. You're not going to make a ton of money, but yeah. How many times have your ideas failed before you reach success? I had mentors, so that's never really happened to me. I've definitely underperformed what I would have liked to do, but if you build along knowledge, you get some mentors, you won't have big crash and burns. You know, you might want to make 10 million bucks and you only make $1 million, but that's a great way. Don't get in the mentality that you have to fail. What you do have to do is learn from failures, but it doesn't have to be your failures. That's the key thing. It doesn't have to be your failures. If you're watching this later, if you're watching the archive, make sure, I think on Periscope you can leave hearts on this. If you like this stuff, I'll keep popping in. Thanks for showing up.